And these are live pictures that we have coming into the newsroom from Petah Tivka in north of Tel Aviv in Israel. And as you heard the reporter there saying, these are civilian areas, coffee shops and residential buildings, and a lot of damage done in these strikes, this latest retaliation against Israel after its attack on the Iranian facilities and top members of the Iranian regime. Let's get some analysis. I'm joined by Executive Vice President of the Quincy Institute of Responsible Statecraft, Trita Parsi, joins us live from Washington. Trita, it's interesting dilemma now for Donald Trump because there are many within his party that don't want him to buy into this conflict. In fact, he campaigned about ending the wars, and many in the MAGA political machine don't want to be drawn into another Middle East conflict. But there are others, including in Israel, not all, but some, who will be putting the heat on him to get involved directly against Iran right now, Trita.
Thank you so much for having me. Before I answer your question, if I could just quickly also note, it is not entirely correct to say that the Israelis have targeted nuclear facilities. They have targeted nuclear facilities, but they have bombed residential buildings. That's the first thing that they did in Tehran in their first attack that they did when this whole thing was started by them. Today, according to Israeli media, they set off 5 car bombs in Tehran, which essentially is the definition of terrorism. So this is something the Israelis started. I don't think they expected that the Iranians would have the ability to retaliate in the manner that they have. And I think they're taken in for a bit of a shock. In regards to your question, it's not some in the MAGA crowd that is completely against it. It's the overwhelming majority in the MAGA crowd that are very upset, even sensing a feeling of betrayal that Trump greenlighted this in the first place. They don't want anything to do with this war. They don't want to get dragged into the war. Where you have differences is in other parts of the Republican Party, in the more neoconservative or traditional wing of it. That's where you have strong support for this war and for the U.S. getting into this war. But amongst the MAGA crowd itself, it is overwhelmingly negative.
Yeah, well, that was part of the campaign, was to not get involved in wars where it wasn't applicable to the America First vision or to America's security. And the Middle East is a big part of that. The criticism from Donald Trump over the years that the US gets drawn into conflicts in the Middle East, that was a big part of his message, including in this most recent campaign. But having spoken to an Australian academic, Kylie Moore-Gilbert, earlier in the program, she was held as a political prisoner by the Iranian regime. And she spoke to me earlier, held wrongfully for a couple of years, I should mention, in Tehran. And Kylie was telling me on the program earlier, Trita, that there would be mixed emotions among many in Iran right now with some of the hated regime that have been knocked off by the Israeli attacks. There's fear, yes, but also some sense of hope with members of this hated regime that have been killed, Trita.
So without a doubt, this is a tremendously unpopular regime. And as you said, in many, many parts, deeply, deeply hated. However, this is not the sentiments that we have seen amongst the people in Iran, perhaps some in the diaspora, because at the end of the day, what has not been reported as much is the number of civilians, which is now somewhere close to 300 to 400 that have been killed in these attacks, sleeping in at night in their own apartments, their only crime being that they slept in the same apartment building that as someone else who apparently was in the regime. So people are seeing that. So we've seen a tremendous rallying around the flag, not a rallying around the government, but a rallying around the flag phenomenon in Iran. I have to admit, much deeper and stronger than I expected, given the unpopularity of the regime. And I think it goes directly to the manner in which the Israelis have done this. 3 days before negotiations were going to take place, targeting apartment buildings, civilian centers where people were asleep, where civilians have been killed in large numbers. That has completely turned the population against what the Israelis are doing right now.
Trita Parsi from the Quincy Institute in Washington, appreciate your time.